Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart, and Happy New Year.
Same to you, Jim.
Stewart, the big issue here in northern BC, we have a blockade stopping the construction of a court-approved project. They have an injunction saying these protesters are supposed to be removed so this $40 billion LNG project can go ahead. Can you give us some background to it and also maybe explain why these protesters aren't all that legit?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting issue, isn't it? Here we've got a major project that spans, geographically speaking, from the so-called upstream in natural gas. That means where the gas comes from, and that is, in this case, is mostly northern BC, northeast BC, so Dawson Creek and Fort St. John, all those resource-producing areas. And that has to get into a pipe, move across British Columbia, the north end of it, from east to west, ultimately to salt water. And that's where it will feed the LNG, the liquefied natural gas plant, that will allow Canada to finally get proper global market value for a really precious needed commodity that is desperately needed in countries that are lining up to buy it, in Japan, in Korea, and China. They need it because they're trying to do the right thing for the environment. So we're helping them with that. There's no question that this is an environment project to make a better world. And there's a choke point. You know, if you go through the mountains of the Northwest, it's pretty intimidating territory. There's some nice valleys and passes up there. Not many of them though. And the one and only way to get that gas in a pipeline through to the coast is through the route that Coastal GasLink, the name of the pipeline being built, is trying to pass through. So it's very close to the town of Houston. There's a choke point where for probably about 10 years, a number of organizations funded by U.S.-based eco-activists have identified the opportunity to create blockages to resource projects. Previously, they used that same project. They've been funding it for 10 years to create the appearance of local indigenous opposition to Northern Gateway Pipeline. But since that project was canceled, they've pivoted to opposing the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And 1 year ago, you might remember, it was in the news that the Mounties were out, there was blockade protests, and it was big media frenzy. The New York Times came out, and it suggested that there was a indigenous opposition to the pipeline, when in actual fact there's, I believe, about 20 First Nations along that pipeline corridor in that part of the country who've actually come out in support of this pipeline. So the vast majority of these organizations, but as I think most people are aware by now, there's in that particular part of the country, especially a divide or I guess a dual governance system in the hereditary system. And the hereditary system, as the name suggests, is one that is passed down from mother to daughter and father to son through the ages, and it is governed by traditional law. It has some formality to it, but it is not the same thing as the elected system, which is the one by which resources are brought to communities, so they have access to roads and electricity and health care and things like that. You know, that's the elected system that provides for people living. So it's kind of a church and state thing. And it's that church side of it, as it were, that in this small case near Houston, the Wet'suwet'en blockade, or there's different names for it, the Unistoten groups have been part of this, and they have what they say evicted the Coastal GasLink employees from one of the camps, and this threatens the project. So that's the current situation. It just unfolded in the last few days, and I think it's creating a little bit of anxiety, not least amongst the 20 First Nations that believe that this project will help their youths to have the jobs that will get them off the couch, that will address the terrible youth suicide rates, the high unemployment in those areas, the general lack of access to economic opportunities, and just being denied these solutions and ability to participate in trades jobs that pay so well and other jobs, pathway out of poverty. It's creating a lot of discomfort amongst those elders and parents who want to see a better future.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, is this a foreign-funded protest that is really, I guess, strategically targeted to prevent Canada from competing with other energy-producing nations?
Yeah, I had the chance to review a lot of statements made over the years, videos that were posted, financial records. I mean, it's pretty clear to see that this was identified a decade ago as a strategic choke point that groups like Tides Canada, with its American funding, can use to create momentum for their campaign to stop economic development in Canada. It's interestingly, about a year ago, when I pointed this out on Twitter, I think Tides Canada itself came back and said, "Well, yes, that's right, we do that, and we're very proud we do it." Well, I don't think they should be proud of creating poverty for Indigenous people who reside in Canada. They seem to think that's their job. But, it's not controversial to say that this situation exists. There's the financial statements for the Office of the Wet'suwet'en, which organizes some of these protests, clearly show that hundreds of thousands of dollars from these foreign groups that do not have Canadian interests at heart or even respect Canadian law, are flowing that money in to create they're building structures on the proposed pipeline route. They're providing, if you go and look at who's at these supposed local Indigenous blockades, they're not local people for the most part. Yes, of course there's some, but it's kind of a theatrical performance for the media age that they create this show. And of course the media for the most part is not very discerning. They just come up and they see people holding a sign or dressed in a certain way or making certain claims, and they take it at face value. There's a tradition. When I started in journalism, Jim, you actually questioned and challenged people's claims to authority and credibility, and you took them to task if they failed to meet a basic test. Every day I see in the media today, these questions are not asked, and that's really the aim of these organizers to exploit the dramatic effects of this protest show that they've created. And why this is consequential, of course, is that it's limiting Canadian prosperity. It's limiting Canada's ability to be a player globally in providing lower carbon, lower emissions products to the world at a time when it most needs those products.
Well, with, of course, the international picture is protesters, blockades. The Mounties don't want the bad image of hauling Aboriginal people off to jail. and a provincial government that seems to have its hands tied. Is this connected to the United Nations agreement to the rights of Aboriginal people that the BC government has just signed, and is that why they might be reluctant to take any action? They don't want to seem to be in violation of their legislation.
Yeah, I think this is a question a lot of people are talking about right now, because there was also a UN committee that has just come out while this is already going on, this sort of conflict in the northwest of BC. It's come out and issued what they call a written directive to end racism by stopping Site C project, by stopping Trans Mountain, and by stopping Coastal GasLink. That's, what would that be? The rough guess, that's $25 or $30 billion worth of investment in a cleaner future. This UN group is trying to stop by making accusations that Canada is a racist country that is pursuing project development that is racist development, whatever that means. Now, for those who follow this and are aware that in all three of these cases, these are projects that went through national approval processes. They were accepted by the provinces that they existed. They were accepted by the federal government and cabinet at the very highest level of government. Then they were challenged by different groups. And I say, hey, those challenges are not a bad thing, because they ensure that we have the strongest and best projects we have. They'll mean that any weaknesses or deficiencies in these projects can be addressed. And you look at the number of conditions that are attached. What was it, 150 conditions to the Trans Mountain pipeline when it was first approved? Well, then they added a whole bunch more after, because of litigation. So our courts have operated to make these the best projects in the world. And to say that they're not legitimate when this UN group comes in and does that is, well, it's nothing short of laughable. And all they seem to be doing is echoing the talking points of the foreign funded activist groups that have no stake in Canada, that exist only for the purpose of fundraising around their particular issues, so they can perpetuate their work. And they have no accountability, no responsibilities. They're not there to provide jobs for the communities that they are exploiting. They're not there to do anything for global climate like Canada is. They're just there to self-perpetuate their agenda of fundraising and spending money on creating this aura that they're trying to create about Canada right now. And that's why I think a reasonable person is rightly quite upset by the situation.
Who's on this UN committee?
Well, the UN committee, it has countries that have really no moral authority on this issue. One of them is China. So here's China pointing the finger at Canada for these democratic processes that have resulted in a legally sound set of projects. Meanwhile, what is happening in China with their approach to any number of issues? I mean, let's not even get started. From Hong Kong to their ethnic minorities and the treatment and the use of monitoring of citizens, to almost get into this sort of Orwellian thought control, social control process. It's shocking that such a country would have the gumption to be involved in a process that points the finger at Canada like this. It sounds like more a distraction from their own failings that they can sort of go around and do this. I mean, it's really disgusting, and any reasonable, rational Canadian should be looking at this with great disgust, which is why, I'm kind of worried about it, because there's another really good thing that's happening right now, which is that recently in BC, 82 of 82 MLAs in our provincial legislature approved a new bill, Bill 41, or DRIPA for short, Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, DRIPA, which is based on the principles of a UN initiative called UNDRIP, the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, which is a good thing. I can't find an expert in government, in law, in industry in Canada who says it's not a good thing. Okay? So, what it means is bringing rights and respect to the forefront for Indigenous people. Because right now, let's face it, as Perry Bellegarde, the national chief, of the Assembly of First Nations of Canada said to me in an interview not long ago, right now, Canadians are probably number 5, number 6 in terms of their quality of life in the world. And sometimes you've all seen those lists. We're number 1 or 2, right? We're way up there. Well, Indigenous people in Canada are number 65 on that list. Well, they belong with everyone else. Why aren't they there? That's what the rights and respect agenda that I see in this UNDRIP is about. So, I know some people are sort of putting the two together right now, like UNDRIP equals these crazy UN committees making ridiculous false claims about Canada. It's different. I think the UN's got a branding problem right now because a lot of people, understandably, when they hear UN right now, it makes them angry. And that's a problem for not just the BC government. They've got some work to do to explain that UNDRIP's a good thing, that DRIP is a good thing. And I really believe that's something they should be doing because they're right. They say that. But also the federal government Trudeau is committed to adopting the same kind of thing into Canadian law in this calendar year. 2020 is the year when the federal government will adopt this too. And if a significant number of Canadians get this foul UN racist committee coming in and besmirching Canada's reputation for no good reason, that's going to affect their ability to do the right thing on rights and respect for a legitimate agenda. So I'm really concerned about this, Jim.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, are you or is anybody taking any action that could maybe explain how UNDRIP could affect development? And are people willing to talk and move forward to make sure that Aboriginal rights are respected and Canada can get on to the business of being Canada?
Well, there are some good things happening. There's a magazine coming out, Rights and Respect, next week that will be part of a conference in Vancouver on Tuesday, the 14th of January, all day long. And it is coming about because there's a number of Indigenous groups that are interested in the economic and social questions that have said, look, let's put our heads together. Let's leave things we disagree about at the door as much as we're able to and enter the big hall to talk about these issues, the challenges. I've been lucky enough to be able to work with these groups in developing this program, finding the path to shared prosperity. There's actually a website, undrip2020.ca. Don't get mad when you see UNDRIP in it. I mean, it's just a few letters. And I think what they have in common, and there's going to be about 500 people who gather next Tuesday, is a desire to ensure that the Canadian way of life is there for all people who are in Canada, irrespective of their background, unimpeded by the Indigenous issues that arise from things like the Indian Act and the, cultural legacy of residential schools, which we should all know about at this point in time. Many of the disparities that arise from being small groups often, especially in BC's case, 200 First Nations around BC, scattered around these mountain valleys, often very isolated, not enjoying the access to healthcare and education or jobs. How do you create opportunities? And it's not, you might think, oh, well, this is about things that happen in the rural space. Well, not really. Yeah, sure. It's about things like, forestry and mining and moving energy products to where they need to be. It's about other things too. It's about education. We have some institutions of higher education who have said, hey, we need to be in this. It's about finding, respect through being a participant in the work of creating a living for people, having a roof over their heads and being able to advance and see their children get out of poverty. So there's going to be people like Mike Downey is one of the speakers. Everyone's heard of his late brother, Gord Downey, a true Canadian icon who passed away, sadly, a couple of years ago now. Mike and his brother worked together on a story that Mike himself learned about on Cheney Wajak, that story from the 1960s about a boy who walked in the cold toward home from a residential school. And it became a story that unified Gord's work in his last days and Mike's work. And Mike is continuing to do that work. So he's actually coming out to talk to people in Vancouver about what they're doing. So it's, pretty interesting development to see that happen. Chief Robert Joseph is one of the most venerated thinkers about reconciliation in Canada. He's also coming out to share his heartfelt beliefs. I've interviewed the chief before, and he's one of those people you feel like you've met Mother Teresa when you encounter Bob Joseph, and you go away just it rocks your world. You're not even sure why, but he's someone who just transmits a sense of here's what we need to do to heal not just Indigenous people, but Canada's a little bit broken too because of how this is all played out, and how do we get to a better place? I mean, that's really at the heart of this. It's not just build this, do that. It runs much deeper, and for the First Nations chiefs and elders who are participating in this, I've had the chance to talk with many of them, and it's just incredibly emotional what is happening right now, because they're thinking about the future, 7 generations, but also, today's kids and the grandkids, are front of mind and creating those opportunities. And there's actually some Indigenous youth who are coming out who are part of that, who are going to be sharing, what they do with this group. It's a lot of business people. It's people from, leading institutions in BC, and also a lot of the Indigenous leaders who said we have to do this. And so, I think there's a lot of interest. There's been a lot of people, talking about this and writing about it. And I do feel that this whole thing we were talking about earlier about the UN Racism Committee and these outrageous, statements it's making about attempts by Canada to be part of the global move towards cleaner energy and also empowerment of Indigenous people, it's causing some confusion right now as to what the right path is for rights and respect. And Canada is, without a doubt, Jim, on the right path in this regard. So, I think those who care about this should be speaking up about it and helping to ensure that by doing the right thing through Bill 41, the DREPA Act, and what follows nationally, we're recognized for that. Because right now the UN is only coming out to criticize with no basis in law or fact, the Canadian approach to developing its potential.
Stuart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com, his Twitter handle, @SJMuir. If you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.